Hello everyone, my name is Nick. I hope you can hear me well. Thanks for joining us today. As Jezad mentioned, last week with the release of 1.2, we just released the first version of Restate UI, one of the most requested feature we had for a while. And today we try to show you a sneak peek of how the Restate UI might help you in your Restate journey. So let me share my screen and we can start. Hopefully you can see my screen. So for the purpose of this demo, I am running the Restate server locally. And let's say you can access the Restate server, Restate UI through your admin port, usually run through the port 9070. So let me go through port 9070 and hopefully I should see my Restate UI, which looks something like this. Please let me know if it's too small. So usually when you go to your Restate UI, you land on your overview page, which as the name suggests, it should give you an overview of your services, where they are hosted, and their handler. So for instance, in this example scenario, I have a couple of services. I have a user manager, I have a virtual object, user object, and I have also a workflow for email verification. And you can basically inspect each of these entities. For example, I can go to a user manager service. I can see, okay, it has a handler. The handler has a request of type user request. So you can actually see the type of the request and the type of the response. And it returns, for example, email ID, name. You can see other attributes like what is the access, is it public or not. You can also edit the retention period for your services or timeouts. You can also see which version of your service is deployed where. You can also dive into each deployment. So for instance, here I can see deployment at port 9082, basically host 3 services. I can see which HTTP version is supporting and which protocol. And if your deployment is also trained, you have the option to also basically remove that deployment. So this is basically a quick overview of how what you can do in the overview to get an idea of what's happening in the Restate. Okay. For the purpose of this demo, let's go down a storyline. Let's say I joined a new team in my company and we are working on a new application. And another team in my company has built this amazing generic user management, identity management service, and we want to take advantage of that. Okay, so I come to Restate UI. I see how it looks like. I see there is a user manager, user object, email verification flow. I understand that, okay, maybe I should basically work with this create new user handler to basically integrate my application to this identity management service, and I want to play around with it. Okay, so usually so far by now you go to the terminal, you use some curl to invoke this service and see what type of request or basically response you are getting. Restate UI tries to basically aims to simplify your life in that respect. Before we dive into that, let's go to the invocations page. Okay, so the invocation page is basically where you can see the active invocations. Okay, since I'm trying to we're going to go a bit deeper in the invocation page what you can do, but the idea is you see the list of active invocation and you have a query bar here that you can query the invocations based on different filters. For example, the services, the status, deployment, retry count, many filters. So in this instance, I'm interested in user manager. I'm only want to call the user manager. I'm not interested in this all suspended invocations. So I'm gonna update. So now it's a bit, less busy. So I can focus on interacting with my service. instead of going through the terminal and do a cur, our SDK now expose Open API spec per service, and we give you an option to use our playground to interact with that Open API spec for your service. So, for example, here in the user manager, I can see that I have an endpoint for create new user. It looks like this. The body looks like this. The response looks like this, and I can actually basically invoke this endpoint. Let's go and try to do something like this and say this is Nik. Okay, so I'm gonna send the API request. I'm gonna update the invocations, and I can see perfect. So this is my invocations. I can see that I invoked the create new user with this parameter. As I suspected, that user manager actually created a user object and basically saves those information in a virtual object in the Restate along with the user ID. And the email verification is basically the point of trying to verify the user email. So it seems like I sort of understand now how the system works. And now I want to basically try to add a new service to integrate with this user manager service. Okay. So for that, I have to go back to the overview page, and I have to basically register my service to the Restate. So Restate is aware of my service. So I actually hooked up a new service called Account Manager. It's quite simple, just has a register handler, which tries to integrate with the user manager to just simply create a new user. Nothing more than that. But I want to see basically how this can work, okay? So I'm gonna, in the terminal right bottom, I'm gonna run my service, and it's on port 9081. So I'm gonna, I'm gonna go back to the overview page, and I'm gonna try to register my service. And so I'm gonna enter the endpoint, and here when I press next, we try to basically fetch the data from the service that you are trying to register. So I can double check, okay, so I'm trying to register the account manager, it's a service, it's the first revision, it has one handler, and I can double check the type of the request and the response, for example. I'm happy more or less, and I can confirm, and I have basically my account manager now is registered. Now I want to also try to invoke and try to test how this account manager actually is it working as I intended or not. So let's go back to the invocations page, and again, let's try to focus mostly on the account manager. They're not interested in other invocations. And let's try to basically invoke the service using a different email address, restate.
We have a question in the chat from Sebastian saying the UI looks amazing and asking, do you guys intend for external services and front ends to call straight into Restate or put it behind an API gateway?
Thanks, Sebastian. So at the moment, the Restate, if I understand your question correctly, the Restate UI is behind the admin services. So whether you expose your admin services, if you are exposed, and I don't know if you have a mechanism to authenticate who can access your admin port of the Restate, you can access the Restate UI as well. At the moment, we don't have any story other than that. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything else, but at the moment, the authentication works. If you have access to the admin port, then you have access also to the Restate UI. I hope I answered that question. So let me go back to try to basically invoke my service. So let's say I'm trying to invoke my service using this email and name. I'm going to do that. I'm going to update my query again. So here I can see, okay, I created, I invoke the register invokes the user manager, it passed the parameter as I intended. I can here go actually to the invocations that was invoked by the my account manager, and I can see, okay, created the user object, fine, and now it's creating the email verification workflow. I can even go a bit further than that. In the email verification flow, I can see actually there is an issue now. And the invocation is failing, it's retrying, the restate is retrying, it has retried 10 times now, and I can see which step actually is failing. So you can see the execution log, the journal of each invocation. So first, in the workflow, we try to run, we pass the correct parameter, it seems okay. When we try to send the email, it seems like there has been an error. So when I look at the error, it seems like I get this error, test address that there is blocked. Okay, funny error, but I'm not familiar with this service, so somebody else developed that, so I don't know how I can proceed with this. So what we try to capture is whatever you are looking at in the screen, everything is encapsulated in the URL. So you can just easily copy the URL and send it to your colleague that works in the, for example, the email verification workflow, and they can open this in a new tab, and they land exactly at what you are looking at. And so they can come and see, okay, I can see that they are seeing this issue, so let's go and try to figure out what's the issue. So I can come to my code, and the simplest bug, I can see that, okay, if the email is equal to restate.dev, I'm actually throwing an exception. So let's try to comment that out and then try to basically rerun our service here. So if I go back now, if I refresh, I should hopefully see that the workflow is running now, and it should basically finish. I put a delay of about 45 seconds. In 45 seconds, you should hopefully see that we're still waiting for the email link, and the user should basically verify the link. And yeah, as you can see.
In the meantime, we had a question in the chat asking if the UI is targeted at development purposes and production operation purposes. Maybe you can give us a bit of insight and vision there.
So the ideal scenario is we're trying to basically capture the both use cases. So for the purpose of this demo, I try to focus more on the development personnel, but in the productions, we try to also help make sure that the Restate UI helps you to basically, in the large volume of invocations, you try to capture what's the issue. If there is a, I don't know, maybe some observability issue that we can capture later on. It still is work in progress. This is the first version, but the aim is to basically capture the both use cases. I think it's fair to say in the first version, our focus has been more toward the development side. But as we iterate, we're going to capture more also in the production side with adding more observability stuff to the UI. If I refresh the query, as you can see, my invocation has been succeeded and it's gone. And this basically gives you an idea how you can interact with the Restate UI and while you are developing. Just to give you an idea of basically what you might want to look at in the productions, because there was a question. Let's go back to our original invocations page, and let's say I'm interested to see if there has been some invocations that in the email workflow that hasn't been updated for a while. Okay, so let's say I select the service email verification, and I say if the modified was before 1 day ago. So basically, I'm 1 day ago. Let's see if it's a live demo. It did not work as usual. And if I delete this, sorry, I wanted to show you, I don't think we, apparently we don't have those invocations. I was trying to mark some old invocations that apparently they went away. But more or less, that's the idea, that you can also try to capture if there is an old invocation and for some reason hasn't been modified, you can capture those and through this query and see what's the issue and maybe get to the bottom of the issue. That's one of the scenarios in production system you can also do. Yeah. I think that covers mostly my demo. I'm happy to answer any other question if there is.
Yeah, there was another suggestion related to the production versus development features, whether we are considering the ability to disable development features in production. If we have like this is something.
That's also something, yeah, if there are some features that only make sense for the development, yes, we make sure that it's not available in the production, yes. Thank you.
Right, cool. Any other questions on the UI? Or other suggestions on things you would like to see in following versions? Do you have like an idea of a sneak peek of or few features that you're working on for the following versions, Nik?
So hopefully very shortly we're gonna have a new functionality for you to look at the state of the your virtual object, and you can also edit those states. You can query those states. So that's something that comes hopefully very soon. And after that, we have some nice feature around how you can get to the bottom of the invocations, what's happening in the invocations, the timeline of invocations, each step that happened, I guess, in invocations, hopefully in the next few months.
Cool. Looking forward to seeing all the new stuff. This is already really great to work with.
Thank you.
There's a question about the whether the UI will be available on Restate Cloud.
That shortly will come hopefully in a matter of days. Definitely the Restate UI is going to be available in the Restate Cloud. That's also something we are working on heavily on that. Yes.